Dear students, I welcome you all to the 16th session of Histology, Animal Behavior and Applied Zoology paper prescribed by the Mangalore University for 4th semester BSc Zoology. In this session, we shall consider the methods of animal communication. In this session, we have to study how honeybees communicate with one another in their colonies, how monkeys communicate with one another in their groups, and how termites communicate with one another in their colony. Very first, let us see how honeybees communicate with one another in their society. Upon returning to the nest, honeybees can communicate, learning in several unique ways. As well as associative olfaction, where the scent of the body of the returning forager can lead others to the same site. Bees are known to symbolically direct other members of the colony to an abundant food source by a series of dances, specifically the round dance and the waggle dance. These honeybees are very well known for their ability to perform specific kinds of dances, which in turn denotes the location as well as distance of the source of the food. So it is believed that these honeybees can perform various dances in order to indicate the distance of the food and the location too. In this session, we shall consider only two types of highly studied bee dance, which is used by the forager bees to communicate with the colony mates and to denote the location and source as well as the distance of the food from their hives. The round dance. The round dance communicates sites close to the hive, typically less than 100 meters, and consists of a series of circular movements. This dance portrays distance but not any kind of directional instruction. The honeybee performs quickly in the central part of the hive, turning in tight circles in both directions. You can see here the forager bee is simply producing a dance in circular fashion, and this dance typically is done at the center of the hive. Bees will run around in circles, narrow circles, before reversing the direction to their original course. This may be repeated a few times at the same location or move to another location on the comb. Although a round dance communicates the distance, it does not reflect the direction. So this dance is a very simple kind of dance, which is characterized by the exhibition of circular movements in a specific fashion. And the forager may repeat this dance in a particular place, generally at the center of the hive several times, and she may move to another place in the same hive and exhibit the same dance, so as to make most of the colony mates familiar with the distance of the foot. And one of the drawback of this kind of dance is this dance communicates the distance of the foot source, but not the direction of the foot source. So what if the distance of the foot is more than 100 meters or typically more than 150 meters, then the forager has to produce a communicative dance in which she has to show both direction as well as the distance. And this dance exhibited by the worker bees, the foragers, to denote the location and the direction of the food source beyond 150 meters is called the waggle dance. The waggle dance is used when the food sources are further or more than 150 meters or 100 meters away from the hive and describes both direction as well as the distance. The honeybee will dance in a semicircle, then make a straight line back to the start and perform the semicircle in other direction. Pattern like a figure 8 or the number 8. The straight movement of the dance involves lateral wagging of the abdomen pertaining to the name waggle dance. So you can see here there is a central straight line where she simply waggles her back, the abdomen, and reaches a point, and then semicircles reach this point from where she has come, and again waggle at the center and move in opposite direction. So this waggle dance superficially looks like the figure 8. Carl Owen Fish mentioned that the frequency of turns in the dances varied inversely with the distance of the foot available, while the straight runs of the dances indicate their direction of the foot. So the speed of the dance is proportional to the distance. If the dance is more vigorous, that means if the frequency of the dance is very high, then you can simply assume that the food is far away from the hive, and if it is very slow, then you can assume that the food is very near, but beyond 100 or 150 meters. And generally, the waggle at the center is the indication of the direction. He also found out that bees can detect polarized light and thus oriented their dances and foraging flights with respect to the sun. So, the dancers should have some compass, right? So what happens? He observed that the central line of dance where the waggling takes place is generally done in the direction by utilizing the sun as a compass. Due to the directional information that is based upon the sun's position, a forager's dance for a particular resource will change during the day. The bee's wings will emit a low audio frequency of 250 to 300 hertz per second. See, the central line of the waggle dance may change in the same day because the direction of the sun changes, right? So accordingly, the dance is also changed. And in this picture, you can see here, if the food source and sun is having an angle of 30 degrees, it means if you draw a line from the sun towards hive or a line from hive to the food. The angle formed here, if it is producing an angle, then the waggling, the central line of the waggling will produce the same angle with the direction of the sun or with the gravity, that means the earth. See, look at in the first instance here, the sun is here, the food source is exactly at the center, that means in between the hive and the sun. So now the forager comes back to the hive where she produces a waggle dance, keeping her central line parallelly to the direction of food as well as the sun. So if you draw a straight line, all these lines will coincide now. Okay. So the food, if the food is directly in line with the sun, the bee dances straight upwards like this. If the food is at an angle to the sun, the dancing bee changes direction accordingly. So that means, see, if the food source is somewhere here, and if you draw a line from the hive to the sun, then it may produce some angle. The honeybee doesn't know anything about angle and other things, but simply she changes the line. She changes the central line of her dance. And what about the distance? Distance is directly proportional to the duration of the waggles. If waggling is vigorous, then the food is far away. If the waggling is slow, then the food is near. The length of each waggle directly correlates to the distance of the food source, with longer waggles describe longer distances. The direction of the food source is shown by the orientation of the bee during its dance. The angle of the target flowers relative to the position of the sun at that current time is demonstrated by the relative to the vertical angle the bee performs the dance. Now let us see how the monkeys communicate. Monkeys live together in social groups. All members of the group contribute by helping to defend food sources, raise young, and watch for the predators. But it is impossible to live in a social group without some form of communication. Group members need ways to influence and inform each other. This is what drives the language. Monkeys have evolved many ways of communicating, including visual cues, auditory calls, and even some olfactory signals. Some of their visual signals are quite beautiful, like the long, curled tongue of the emperor tamarin, signaling to her mate when she wants to offload her babies. But visual signals only work if they can be seen. In the dense forests and underbush that most of the primates live in, auditory cues are a much more powerful tool. Calls and vocalization can also be modified in pitch, loudness, and duration, which means a vast array of messages can be transmitted, such as alarm calls, tutorial calls, food calls, personal identification calls, dominance calls. These are the basic messages that the primates need to successfully live in groups. But some developed more complex and specialized forms of auditory communication, and some primates developed language too. So the last part of this session is dedicated to study the communication in termites. Most of the termites are blind, so communication primarily occurs through chemical, mechanical, and pheromonal cues. These methods of communication are used in a variety of activities, including foraging, locating reproductive cause, construction of nests, recognition of nestmates, nuptial flights, locating and fighting enemies, and defending the nests. The most common way of communicating is through antennation. That means each member of the colony is provided with an antenna, with a pair of antennae, so with the help of which they can communicate with one another. A number of pheromones are known, including contact pheromones, which are transmitted when workers are engaged in prophylaxis or grooming, and alarm, trail, and sex pheromones. The alarm pheromone and other defensive chemicals are secreted from the frontal glands of the termites. The trail pheromones are secreted from the sternal gland, and the sex pheromones derive from the two glandular sources, sternal and tergal glands of the termites. When termites go out to look for food, they forage in columns along the ground through vegetation. A trail can be identified by the fecal deposits or runways that are covered by objects. Workers leave pheromones on these trails, which are detected by other nestmates through olfactory receptors. Termites can also communicate through mechanical cues, vibrations, and physical contact. These signals are frequently used for alarm communication or for evaluating a food source. Termites can distinguish nestmates and non-nestmates through chemical communication and gut symbionts. Chemicals that are consisting of hydrocarbons released from the cuticle allow the recognition of alien termite species. So that means each termite in a colony is having a peculiar kind of smell, which can only be detected by the nestmates. So if a different smell is coming from the cuticle of an individual mate, probably he must be belonging to some other group. Each colony has its own distinct order. This order is a result of genetic and environmental factors such as termites' diet and the composition of the bacteria within the termites' intestines. So this peculiar odor of the termite cuticle is due to two factors. The first factor is genetic, and the second factor is the environmental factors such as the diet of the termites, composition of the bacteria within the gut of the termites, etc. So this is how honeybees, monkeys, and the termites use different mechanisms to communicate with their colony mates and nestmates. For any further information about the communications in animals, you can refer these textbooks. Thank you.